Hopefully rejuvenated, filled in the belly, and now ready to fill that brain again because we are back for more of DevDays, DevOps, and CyberWise Europe 2024. My next guest is an Agile coach and trainer, and they are here to talk to you about hacking the DNA of Agile teams. My pleasure to introduce Ranjith Venkatesh. Ranjith, the show is all yours.
Thank you very much. So welcome to Dev Days and welcome to the hall for team leads. And today I have an interactive workshop for you. And this workshop is titled CodeCraft Leadership, Hacking the DNA of Agile Teams. So when you hear that, is this going to be a session where, I'm going to pull out some command line and start hacking away? No, not really. It's something a bit different. It's more of a workshop where we try and talk and find out how do you work on the DNA of an agile team. An agile team has different things to it. And the way I look at it is I'm splitting it into three parts: the company, the team, and the individual itself. And we'll ask a few questions and see what kind of input we get from the hall and then work with it. If we do not have any input from the hall, then I have somebody who's going to be simulating the hall, and I'll be asking the questions to this somebody. And this will be co-pilot sitting here in case I don't have any interaction and comments or answers coming up from the audience today. So let's jump in and see what we have. Here we go. What is your company's DNA? And this is a question I am going to ask you. And the question is split into two parts. And the first part is, tell us about one successful product or service that your company built in the last 3 to 5 years and what made it successful. Now, let me give you an example of this, right? I mean, I'm going to pick out something here. Here we go. So I'm going to tell you something about one successful product I worked on in my last, with the last company. This was a product which was a sales dashboard, which was used by 1,000+ analysts daily. Not even analysts, these were salesmen, right? These were salesmen sitting at client locations daily to make sales with real customers. And what made it successful is that this dashboard had been manually created for around 3 to 5 years by one person with an Excel sheet and uploading it and creating this dashboard. Now, the business intelligence team came in, automated this dashboard, got the right queries, and made it happen in an automated manner. Now, we had actually, in effect, taken away this knowledge and encapsulated it into a dashboard which was automated. Now, this was an amazing success because we were removing issues of errors that could be done by a person going on vacation, not being able to do that. It took us a good year to build this dashboard, but then the amount of value that was delivering by the sheer amount of usage with 1,000+ salesmen every day made it worth it. Now, let me go over and have a look. Do we have any questions or anything that you want to share here? Let me have a look at our Q&A. Nothing yet. So let me go and pose this same question to Copilot. I'm going to take an example of a data scientist who's working on an app which delivers groceries to homes, right? Now, I'm going to say, this is it. And what do I want to know? I would like to know of one successful product or service that the company built. Now, let's see what Copilot has to tell us here. I'm going to spare the screen sharing on Copilot, and I'm just going to take it out. Here we go. What was successful? Now, the example that Copilot picked up was Instacart, and they said one of the reasons why it was successful is the user experience, right? User experience and timely delivery. Now, I'm going to make note of that. Two things that made Instacart big in the way that they created a successful product or service. Now, let's try and ask the same question. Now, the reason why I say that this is important to know your company's DNA is because very often we join a company, we join a team, and then we start working away. But we know very little about the company's history. What product or service did the company make? What made it successful? And I think those who do not know their history are condemned to repeat it. And the same thing applies to companies that we're working for. If we know what is the history of the company in terms of its products and services, I think it makes a huge difference in the way we engage in the product or service that we are building. Now let's take the same thing, ask one more question, and then see what we come up with, right? So here we go. We talked about a data scientist. How about a software developer working on an e-commerce application? I'm going to ask the same question to Copilot and see what we have to okay. Now, one of the things that Copilot is just bringing up is Sephora, which is a cosmetic product website. And one of the things that really worked well was collaborations with influencers and a loyalty program, right? So here we go. See, just imagine if you are an employee working for Instacart or a Sephora, a new employee, and you come into the team, and in the entire ramp-up process, they tell you what are the products and services, what are the things that we do right, what makes us successful. For an employee joining a company and knowing this, I think it's very imperative, because when you know all this, you know that these are values in the DNA of the company. And these are things that we need to repeat. These are things that our client wants in the day-to-day activities that we do. So ask these questions when you are in a company. And make sure that your new employees know about these successes that the company has already had and share it with them. So let's move on. I'm just going to quickly check if we have any questions that we need to keep an eye on. Don't see any. Off we go. So the next question that we're going to deal with, tell us one of our failed products or services that the company built. But here, most importantly, the question is, what did we learn from it? Now, I'm going to give you an example again from a project that I had worked on. Now, we had built a prototype which was supposed to stay on the platform to figure out if this was the way we want to do it. The estimated time for the prototype to stay around in the platform was 1 to 3 months. And 3 years later, the prototype is in production and it's still running. Very few people know why it works. Very few people know how to maintain it. There is a very small set of people who know how it works even. And it's a constant firefighting. Now, the question is, when we know that this happened, what we learned from it is we had to be very, very careful with the way we position prototypes. We had to be very careful to say that something is running or even ready to show it, especially with this particular client, to be careful before we put anything on the testing platform or the integration platform. We had to be super careful about what they saw, because the moment they saw it, they wanted it on production, and the moment it was on production, it never left, or the budget for the product was again canceled in a way that the prototype just stayed on for longer than planned. So we are very careful in the messaging and setting the expectations with this particular client when we put a prototype, even show them a prototype, because the expectation setting had to be done very differently. That was a very big learning we had. Now, this is something that I think existing employees and even people who've been for a long time know some of these historical behaviors in companies. And I think it's very important for us to know, hey, this is the case, and we should make sure that this is in the DNA of the team members. Of course, it's possible that this kind of behavior changes, but if it is an established behavior, the way of working, I think it's important that this part is also known and we learn from it and make sure that in future we don't make the same kind of mistakes. So the question out there is, tell us about one failed product or service that your company built and what did you learn from it? Let me see if we have any input from the audience. No, so I'm going to go and get some input from Copilot. Here we go. I'm going to ask Copilot about a product that, and this time it's going to be, who is it going to be? It's about a UI designer who was working on a mobile app. Let's see what Copilot has to tell us here. Now, this is the answer that comes up, right? So Vacation Snap. Vacation Snap was the product that failed. Now, the reason why it failed was it was a very big, complex onboarding. It was so overwhelming that the users did not finish onboarding and really start sharing. And even there was a lack of engagement because the social aspect was missing. Now let's say we put this back in our lack of engagement and complex onboarding. Now, how does this help, right? The question is, how does this help in the future? This is a lesson that has been learned. So next time, the user research has to be improved to make sure that um, we understand user behavior, we understand onboarding in a much better way, that a future product does not have the same issues. I'm going to ask the same one more question about a data scientist to Copilot and take it from there. Here we go. One of the examples that Copilot is coming up with, of course, this needs to be cross-checked, is an example was gorillas, and some of the things that Copilot says that went wrong was the profit margins. Charging for £2 to £3 per delivery did not match with the rider earnings, which was around £12 per hour. And so, interestingly, would it have been better to charge more for delivery? So, profit margins and pricing. So, let's put that in. See, now, if you look at this, we are actually getting into places which are not necessarily directly technical, but, it is something that has to be looked at different ways. I mean, if you bring out a product or a service, the profit margins and the pricing has to be even thought of in a way that makes sense for the market and for the thing. And then all of this knowledge gets into the DNA of the company. And if we can get this kind of a knowledge into the team members, we're doing a big service for the company to thrive in the future, just by asking these two questions. What was successful? What made it successful? What failed? And what did we learn? And if this can be done on a regular basis, depending on how fast products and services are released in the market, you already are taking your company's DNA and making sure that it is part and parcel of every single person in the company. Okay, with that said, let's move on. We're going to move on to the next part of our session. I'm just going to quickly check if you have any questions in there. I don't see any. Off we go. We'll keep moving on. The next question that I would like to ask is about, we've talked about the company. Let's talk about the team. When we're talking about the team, the question that I would like to ask the team is, tell us about a product or a service that above the team that is high on quality and that you're proud of. Now let's take 3 imaginary teams here. Yeah. three imaginary teams, and something that they're proud of. Now, if you want to make this exercise interesting, you also tell them these three teams. Let's say I'm going to give each of these teams. Now, let's say I'm going to call this IT. Then I'm going to call this data science. Then I'm going to call this team let's say, finance. Now, let's say we say each of these teams, representatives from each of these teams have got together for a meeting. And they are now required to tell us about one product or service that is high on quality, but at the same time known to the other two teams. Now, this is challenging because it doesn't always happen that you have a product or a service from one team which is known to the other teams. But for the assumption of this exercise, let's assume that that is the case, right? Now, let's say IT is very proud of one change. Let's say IT had brought in two-factor authentication, and they're super proud of it because security in the company has increased, and they are able to ensure that the right people have access to the right systems, right? Something that IT is very proud of, and they've rolled it out to 5,000 employees. Now, data science, be careful that whatever we're talking about has to be relevant to IT and finance, right? But at the same time, it's something that the data science team is very proud of. Now, let's assume the data science team create a dashboard for IT, which has financial repercussions. And it's a dashboard which shows computer, laptop, usage, repairs, replacement statistics, right? So let's give it a name. Laptop maintenance dashboard. Now, this is a report created by the data science team and used by IT, has a financial repercussion, has a financial. Now, at the same time, let's ask the finance team for something that has a repercussion on all of this. Let's say the finance team says they provide the data which is involved in laptop procurement and laptop repair costs. Let's say that, right? The data that finance has this data and it provides it for the data science team, right? Now, basically, each of these are products or services by these teams, which are known to the other teams. Now we have this. Now this exercise starts getting interesting. Now the question that I ask to these three teams is, or the representatives from these three teams, is to use a smiley. Let's say we have three people playing this game, and I would ask each person to use one smiley for something which is from a different team and tell us whether a happy smiley, a neutral one, or a sad one. Now, this is based on the way they perceive the product or the service. This is again internal to the company between different teams. Right? Now, let's say IT says, "Oh, they love this dashboard," and they give a smiley for this. Ooh, that's a big one, but I'm going to put one smiley here. And at the same time, IT says they're happy. They're happy with the dashboard, but the data, they're a bit neutral because it could be better. Um, Sometimes it's not up to date, and a bit of a neutral thing. Now, let's say the dashboard people say, ooh, this, it's so difficult to get the data from the finance team. So they've given a data science and IT. The data science team seems to be pretty happy with IT because here you go. Oh, did I say happy? I did. Now, at the same time, the finance team, let's see what the finance team has to do now. Now, the finance team thinks the data science people, they want data all the time and are bothering us a lot. And they're not so happy with this. But at the same time, they're very happy with the two-factor authentication. So there goes. Another smiley to go here. Now, if we look at this diagram, right, and we think about how do we analyze this diagram, let's, for somebody who looks at this diagram, this quality poker, you look at it from the outside, you look immediately and you see that the two-factor authentication from IT has smileys from both the finance and the data science team, which means two-factor authentication is not just a product or service that IT is proud of, it's also has a quality or a perceived quality which is pretty high in the eyes of data science and finance. But at the same time, this is the positive side. Now, this is what can we learn from this diagram. You look at the laptop finance data. There is neutral and sad, which means the finance team thinks that they are able to provide the data, but at the same time, the quality perception from other teams is not high. In fact, it is low or neutral. That gives a lot of input for the finance team, right? The team can actually learn from this and figure out, hey, is there a way for me to make this better? Go and talk to the data science team to understand if they can clean the data, make it more regular, and don't go talk to IT to figure out why are they neutral about it. We want a smiley and not a neutral face. So there's homework for the finance team to do. And looking at the data science team, you realize they have smiles and not so happy faces, which means the job of the data science team is clear here because they know that they have a good quality perception from IT, but they don't have a good quality perception with the finance team because they keep bothering the finance team with data. So there is a clear mandate here that the data science team and the finance team need to sit down and have a chat to figure out what is going wrong here. Maybe they can make it better. So the quality poker is a game that I can definitely recommend for teams working with other teams. When you do this exercise, the nice thing about this is there are no numbers involved. There is emotions and feelings about a product or a service that we think is of high quality and we are proud of, but the perception is different across other teams. And if we can get just with these smileys, we have so many actions that we can take to understand and make this much better. And when we can do that, what we achieve is that we are improving the DNA of the way the team works and teams between each other work. That's quickly jump over and see if there are any questions. Don't see any. And I'm going to move over. Let's move on to our last part of our discussion. And what is this, right? What is this last part of our discussion? This is the following. What is in your DNA? Now, the question, we started with the company. We moved on from the company to team and how between teams and interaction happens. And now we're at the part where we're talking about what is in your DNA. And when it comes to your DNA, I want to know what is your 1, 3, and 5-year plan. Now, is that asking for a lot? Is that something that is normally only for 2 people? You and your supervisor, you and your team lead, or you and your manager? Are these the only 2 people who should be interested in that? I think not. The reason why I think not is because very often there are 2 people who have expectations, who possibly know what a person wants and are not able to satisfy it. And when they are not able to satisfy it, you don't leave a company, you tend to leave a manager. And what if we can break that? What if we can make 1, 3, 5-year plans of people transparent? Let me give you an example for this, right? And the example is based on 2 different things, right? One is that you're a junior developer in a software team creating test automation software for cars. At the same time, you're a senior architect in a software team creating test automation software for cars. What if the 2 of them knew the 1, 3, 5-year plans of each other? I'm going to take the help of Copilot to understand what could be the 1, 3, and 5-year plans of these 2 people. And then we're going to take these 5-year plans and see what we can do with them. Now, a junior developer wants, let's say this junior developer wants to get certified this year. In 3 years, wants to lead small projects, and in 5 years, start mentoring junior developers. So I'm going to put that in, right? Junior developer, 1 year, certifications, 3 years, lead small teams, 5 years, mentor junior developers. Now that sounds like a good plan. Now I'm going to ask the same question to the senior architect and see what the senior architect has for us, right? I'm excited to see what Copilot is going to tell me here, because I'm going to see if we can find a way for these 2 people to learn from the 1, 3, 5-year plans of each other. Now, the senior architect wants the following, wants to technical mastery in a 1 year. Second year, wants to attend conferences like DevDays and contribute to the conferences. 5 years, become a CTO. So let's see, let's put it in. here. Here we go. Technical mastery, 3 years. Speak in conferences, 5 years. CTO. Now, look at these two people, right? These are two people who have their 1-3-5-year plans. And my assumption is here that let's make it transparent to both of them and see if both of them can help the other person with the same thing. Right? Let's assume, how does a junior developer help a senior architect? You could assume that somebody with less experience cannot do anything to help another person, but that's not always the case, right? So let's assume a junior developer comes in and came with a background of gaming and is now going to work in a data science as a junior developer. Now, there is a domain knowledge that the junior developer has that possibly the senior architect does not have and is able to learn from the junior developer. So there is something that the junior developer can at the same time even pass on to the senior architect. And if the senior architect wants to speak in conferences, he could possibly make the speech once with the junior developer, learn, take input, and improve it before he goes to the conference. Same way around, if the senior architect knows the 1-3-5-year plan of the junior developer, then he can start giving opportunities to the junior developer in a way that he is able to really challenge the junior developer 3 years down the lane in a way that you figure out, how do I give him team lead opportunities to lead small teams after a year or so that this junior developer develops into that role. And if the senior architect is already mentoring the junior developer is going to start learning, because by just going through that program of mentoring, the junior developer understands how this can be done in the future, right? So this 1, 3, and 5-year plan can be extended to different levels. It's not just the junior developer, senior architect. Let's just take it to one more level and see if we can see what the CTO of the company wants. The CTO wants to become a domain expert in 1 year. The CTO, innovation and thought leadership. 3 years, drive innovation into new products. And in 5 years, want to be a thought leader and an influencer in this area. See, so the 1-3-5-year plan is something that you can actually pull off at different levels, from a junior developer to a senior architect to a CTO. And by making it transparent, you understand at each level what somebody who can help you has in their plan. And if each of them can understand and work with these 1-3-5-year plans, we have this network which is greater than the sum. So to zoom out, and when you look at all of what we've discussed, it's all about we're building a system in which we can hack the DNA of agile teams by looking at it in different levels, at the company level, at the team level, and at the individual level. And at each level, by understanding the history of the company, by understanding the quality perception between teams, by understanding the 1-3-5-year plan of individuals, you're understanding the DNA of these agile teams, that we can actually hack its way into leadership. So I'm going to close up this session at this point and then see if we have any question and answers coming up.
There we go. Okay, so yes, folks, if you do have any questions for Angie, drop them in the Q&A section now, and we'll get around to them. One thing I was kind of thinking of there, Angie, is when you went over the 1, 3, 5 year plan thing. How often do you see people who aren't in a leadership position having that kind of thought process? Because I feel like that's something that people, especially when they're in like more youthful years, right, like 20 to 30, they aren't really thinking that far ahead.
Yeah, the thing is, right, the reason why I think it becomes relevant is that they're not thinking that far ahead, is that, and very often when they don't think that far ahead, what happens is we lose them quickly, because that, the next project that they are on does not make them happy, or the next project that they are on is maybe too long, and then they just lose interest because they're on just that one thing which does not keep them on their plan. So what if we help them, especially the junior developers? I'm assuming if we can actually help them create a 135 plan, and we help them to get from 1 to 3, it's possible that by that time they hit the 3, that plan changes. But at least we start getting them into that kind of a thinking way, which is in, which can be put in track with every level above that, if you're talking about the team DNA or the company DNA.
Yeah, and I guess the nice thing there is it's the whole logic of goals, right? It's the reason why it's always good to set them is it gives you a milestone to reach, a milestone to go for. I guess something you're really kind of hitting on here is that especially in these team environments, that's more like to get people invested, right? Like I think one of the probably the biggest issues and why you see these big company turnovers is they don't have this type of foresight that gets people invested. They just assume that, and we've seen it over yesterday, especially. Like there was loads of inputs on this that everyone thinks that what employees want is more money, but they actually want communication that makes them feel invested.
I mean, glad you brought up that point. There's like, I don't know, when was this? Around 5, 7 years back, I was reading this research on how much money makes a person happy. I think, if you're living in a city like Munich, there is it's pretty high. But at the same time, once you hit it, after that, I think people want to belong. People want to provide value. They want their products to actually see the light of the world, right? Not just create products for a year and then nobody uses it, and they say, okay, we just have the budget, let's move on and make the next one. And I think when people don't feel like their work was appreciated, even though they might have the best algorithms in there, they want to be in something that really added value.
Yeah, that kind of thing. I remember we was sitting on yesterday as well. Like one of our speakers was highlighting like just getting thank you emails, right? That makes you feel it's all these small steps. I think that has been a really big kind of sticking point I've noticed over the last how many talks we had on this channel, quite a few so far.
Yeah.
Is this recurring theme of look, your employees are good, they want to do good, but it seems like usually the biggest issue for a management level to identify is they need to feel like they're part of the process, right? Like if you treat them like it's just a 9 to 5, they're going to treat it like a 9 to 5 with no emotion behind it.
Very much. See, even that game that I was talking about across teams, right?
Mm-hmm.
These are, forget new products, forget new services. Even across teams, existing products which have been around, let's say 2FA with IT, right? This is possibly a service that IT provides for the last 5 years or 10 years, depending on the company. And in some companies it works, some companies it just doesn't work, right? You forget your password, you're done for. It takes you another 1 week before you get access to your computer again. But this is something so basic. And just by getting quality, the perception of quality, even inside teams, just helps you increase with existing resources. You don't even need new resources to make it better. You can do it just with whatever you already have.
I think that's the big takeaway here, right? Like quite often people hear these speeches like, okay, but how would I ever implement that in my system? I need to invest thousands and X man hours. And like the reality is a lot of it is already there. It's just the foundation needs tweaking, I'd say.
Yeah.
Um, but but I am just aware. I think we're just coming over time now, my friend. It looks like we didn't have any questions coming through, but folks, Ranji, he's a friendly fellow. You can tell that already. If you want to talk to him, be sure to reach out to him. But Ranji, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on, my friend. And I'm sure we'll see more of you. We even saw some of you hosting on one of the other
That's right. I
stages,
was
virtual
hosting
stages.
some of the sessions yesterday, and I'm moving on to a panel discussion shortly. So
There you go. So if you want to catch more Ranjit, be sure to head over there. And if you want to catch even more Ranjit, make sure you check out the recordings after we're done here. But thank you, my friend. I'll let you get to the next one.
thank you so much. Bye.